When it comes to groceries, I'm always overambitious and think I'm going to be awesome and cook regularly throughout the week. That is not the case.
Hungry Root is perfect because it's your own personal shopper, so they take care of your weekly grocery shopping, recommending healthy groceries tailored to your taste, nutrition preferences, health goals, which makes cooking so much easier for you, Amy.
When I shop for my Hungry Root box every week, I look at my schedule and determine how much I'm willing to cook and how much I need pre-prepared, and always make sure to check the time those recipes take to make.
I love Hungry Root so much because they make it easy to eat high-quality, nutritious food and achieve any diet or health goals, from anti-inflammatory to gut-friendly, gluten-free, or dairy-free, high-protein, and more.
What I love is the automation of this. You can tell Hungry Root what your preferences are, and they fill your cart, and you can make substitutions as you go, and it learns with every box that you fill.
You're going to love Hungry Root as much as we do. Take advantage of this exclusive offer. For a limited time, get 40% off your first box, plus get a free item in every box for life.
Go to hungryroot.com/booktalk, BOOKTALK, and use the code BOOKTALK. That's hungryroot.com/booktalk. And use the code BOOKTALK to get 40% off your first box and a free item of your choice for life.
hungryroot.com/booktalk. Code BOOKTALK, BOOKTALK. One of the things I promise that I do this year is to both treat myself and really take time in what I choose to add to my closet.
As you know, I'm preparing for a wedding and that's super expensive, but just because that's happening in my life doesn't mean that I want to lower the quality of the things that I buy for myself during the regular year.
Quince is my go-to for luxury essentials at affordable prices. Quince offers a range of high-quality items at prices within reach, like 100% Mongolian cashmere sweaters from $50 and washable silk tops and dresses.
The best part about Quince is that all those items are priced 50 to 80% less than similar brands, which is exactly what I'm looking for.
That's because Quince only works with factories that uses safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing practices and premium fabrics and finishes. By working directly with the factories, Quince is able to cut out the cost of the middleman and passes the savings on to us. One of my favorite things I got from Quince is my boyfriend cardigan, which I have not been able to take off.
Their washable silk blouses has really elevated my work wardrobe and makes cleanup super duper easy because I hate dry cleaning.
Give yourself the luxury you deserve with Quince. Go to quince.com/booktalk for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns.
That's QUINCE.com/booktalk, BOOKTALK, to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/booktalk.
It's time for basketball, and Uber Eats is dropping deals on game day favorites to keep you locked in on the action. Like when you're craving a buzzer beater, but also buffalo wings. Or when an upset makes you want to ugly cry into a pizza. And right now, Uber Eats has game day deals from Burger King, Buffalo Wild Wings, KFC, and hundreds more local favorites. So you can keep your eyes on the ball and your hands on a burger. Order now, only on Uber Eats. Product availability varies by region. See app for details.
While thoughts of dead champions plague Selena, Nehemia distracts the assassin by leading her to the kennels, where they find Dorian and his new litter of puppies. Selena defends the lone, ill-tempered pup of the pack, despite Nehemia and Dorian's insistence it should be put down. When Nehemia learns of the slaughter of 500 Eelway rebels, she goes to Selena for comfort. Bedridden by her monthly cycle, Selena has visits from both Kale and Dorian despite her burning desire to be alone. But Dorian persists and confesses his feelings about himself, his father, and Selena's role in their dynamics. Kale watches Selena and Dorian's relationship continue to grow from afar, and Selena begins to doubt Nehemia's intentions after discovering the princess's ability to speak fluently in the common tongue. But all is forgotten on the morning of Yulmuth, when Dorian gifts Selena candy and her new puppy, Fleetfoot.
Hey there, we're Book Talk for Book Talk with Jac and Amy, your book besties who take the novels you love seriously. This is Jac.
And I'm Amy. and we embrace and respect modern fantasy, romance, and romantasy books written by women. And so it is in our nature to analyze these books as we would any other novel we might have dissected in school.
With our combined 13 years of literary academic training, we use our education to analyze and give voice to reasons you may love or hate today's popular books.
This is part 1 of this week's episode, where we're discussing chapters 32 through 36 of Sarah J. Maas's debut novel, Throne of Glass. For a complete list of episodes and chapter breakdowns, be sure to check out our Instagram at the handle Book Talk for Book Talk.
Before we dive in, let's talk about SPILT. Yeah, I did it. Remembered our own thing. That stands for spoilers, perspective, interpretation, language, and themes.
Spoilers. While our discussion is about Throne of Glass, important context from the first 3 novels in the series will be discussed without spoiler warnings. That is Throne of Glass, Crown of Midnight, and Heir of Fire. This is not a read-along for anyone who hasn't read at least these 3 books, and you will be spoiled from here on out. So please, take this as your only spoiler warning. For all other spoilers beyond Heir of Fire and other SJM works, we will keep those to the breadcrumbs and broomsticks area at the end of the episode.
Perspective and interpretation. What we discuss in this episode are strictly our personal interpretation of the text. We do not speak for Sarah J. Maas and in no way know her intentions for her book or characters. We also know our listeners have their own personal views and opinions, and we encourage you to share your thoughts with us because every perspective and interpretation is worth exploring.
Language. Even though Jac tries to keep her swearing to a minimum for the sake of her mother, explicit language does occur, and it is often instigated by me.
Themes. We also discuss some heavy subjects throughout the podcast that can include themes of sex, violence, abuse, depression, self-harm, and death. While we will do our best to give trigger warnings for darker themes, we will discuss these topics when they are important to the text. Listener discretion is advised.
As always, we love keeping the conversation going because our listeners are so good at finding things we've overlooked or missed completely. You can share your interpretation of the text with us by posting on social media, tagging us in stories, sending us DMs, or submitting to the forum on our website. We also post more exclusive content and host live streams for our Patreon supporters. You can find us at patreon.com/booktalkforbooktalk.
This week we ask ourselves, can anyone leave Selena alone? No, that's not the real question, but sometimes I felt can people stop coming to her bedroom?
Just leave the girl alone.
Just leave her alone.
What do we want?
The question should be, we're leaving this all in. I think the question should be, is the way, because some of our earlier questions had to do about perception. Mm-hmm. And I think we're getting a realization of perception and how have the perceptions of everyone changed this episode? How has everyone's perception of each other changed?
Okay. Maybe changed or been dismantled.
That one, because it sounds cooler.
Okay.
I'm going to leave that top part in just because they need to know that we forgot. Themes we'll see in this section also include prey versus predator.
Do you want me to read the question just in case?
No, I want people to know our mishaps. I mean, go ahead. Actually, go ahead, read it.
Just in case. I might not for the video.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
This week, we ask ourselves, how have each character's perceptions of the other characters been dismantled?
Themes we see in this section include prey versus predator.
Chapter 32 opens with Selena equating guards that follow her to a flock. Last time this was used was during the first training session when Selena arrived at Rifthold. The champions followed Cain like a flock of birds. Now, we talked in, I think it was episode 3 about this, that while it could be viewed as a flock of sheep, it is, Selena specifically calls them a flock of birds, and I feel like that applies here as well. Either way, whether you view them as birds or sheep, they are essentially game or prey for the predators. And in this case, who are the predators? Selena and Nehemia.
No, so to Cain.
I have other words about that in a moment. Nehemia has been taking lessons with Selena to improve her use of the common tongue. But the princess and the assassin prefer to speak in ill way to each other. Quote, perhaps it was for ease of comfort. Perhaps it was to see the raised eyebrows and gaping mouths when others overheard them. Perhaps it was to keep their conversations private. Whichever reason, the assassin found the language preferable. At least Endovier had taught her something. Now, as an assassin, Selena must be accustomed to disguise, and therefore finds comfort in it. So it makes sense that something like using the language of Ilwe to be able to disguise what she's saying, to keep secrets from those around her, must be like freedom in a lot of senses. It lends itself to her assassin nature, because disguise gives power to an assassin. And in this instance, Selena feels powerful, Nehemia feels powerful, and rightly so, because their power keeps getting taken away from them. I didn't see my next note. Using Ilwe to speak to Nehemia is not only a form of comfort and power, but it's also about, it adds another layer when you remember that Nehemia and Selena are both prisoners in Rifthold. Like, they might have a lot of comforts around them, material comforts around them, but at the end of the day, they are caged.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I also think that the use of Ilwe as their preferred language is a symbolic rejection of their current life, right, in Rifthold. It's a way to reject all that's happened to Selena, to Nehemia up until this point, and a way to acknowledge, in Selena's case, her survival in Endovier.
So what I want to talk about here is, them talking in their different language. And I think one of it is kind of a shock factor. I think both of Nehemia and Selena like walking around and everyone's like, oh my God, they're speaking a different language. Mm-hmm. And it's like, I think they both enjoy that shock factor because they're both going to get attention. So why not just add more to it? But I do want to point out the line where she says, at least Endovier had taught her something. Look, she was a slave for a year. That's not good. I'm not going to pretend like, she really learned self-esteem and resilience there. Like, no, that was an extremely traumatic experience. Yeah. But to kind of have this idea of at least Elway taught her something, I think what it also taught her was a sense of compassion and camaraderie. Try to say that word slowly, if that makes sense, because she does walk away from Endovier very much associating herself with them. And she now knows what it's like to be at the absolute bottom of the social food chain. She was a slave. That is what she's walking away with, which is a humility that I guarantee a lot of royalty does not have.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I completely agree with what you're saying. And I think that this also demonstrates a shift in Selena's consciousness and the way she's framing her life, right? Yeah. She's far enough away from Endovier now that she's capable of seeing good from the experience rather than just being like it. I mean, she still thinks like, if I go back, it's going to kill me, but it's not all about the horror of it. It's about, well, for all the horror, I did learn something worthwhile.
Yeah, completely. And the more that she uses the language with Nehemia, I think the more it's replacing the memory of when she used the language. So I actually think the more that they speak in Ilwe, I think it's her processing and coping through her trauma. It's good for her. Completely. SJM goes pretty hard on the whole friendship stuff. Because she's pretty good about this, where it's like, I'm going to, a few chapters before, really drill in this thing just to make you question it later. And she's drilling in friendship. Quote, Selena's throat tightened. No one has called me friend in a long time, the assassin said. An inky black crept into the corner of her memory as she struggled against it. There are parts of me that She heard it then, the sound that haunted her dreams, hooves pounding, thunderous hooves. Selena shook her head, and the sound stopped. Thank you, Nehemia, she said with sincerity. You're a true friend. I kind of like where SJM chooses the word, the lingo, the wordage of the assassin said. And she does this throughout the book where there's a removal between Selena and the assassin. And I think it makes sense that the assassin said this because the assassin is the one who went through some of the betrayal. And we're not going to hint to it because it's not the first 3 books, but she's clearly hinted to a betrayal happening. So the assassin is the one who went through that betrayal. And the assassin is the one that needs to cope through that. And, it's kind of like a reminder of like, hey, I have PTSD with friendship. I would hate to be betrayed again.
But and it's also what I like about this moment is it's showing Selena's just not just a petty bitch.
Yeah.
Like, she actually has some trauma.
We really go hard on her in the beginning of this book. Like, we've been editing some of the earlier episodes, and we're like, she sucks. And while I don't completely disagree, it's not without reason.
Right. But, and this is what happens, though, when an author chooses to withhold information, right? You as an individual make judgments, but then as you learn more, those judgments are dismantled and replaced with more information.
Yep.
When Selena tries to explain why she cannot join Nehemia and the Queen at the play that evening because Nehemia has invited her, Nehemia recognizes Selena cannot tell her why and remarks that everyone must be afraid of Selena. Quote, men will always be silly about such things. She's speaking mostly about Cale and Dorian being afraid of her. Selena in this moment is describing men in a way men usually describe women/girls, like girls are just silly little things. And in doing so, I feel like Selena is diminishing male power because she's equating them to a man's version of girls. Not that Selena thinks girls are that way, but men do, and she's going to put them down.
Yeah, I mean, Selena does have a weird relationship with other girls. You know, like we've seen her speak of women in very poor fashion. We've seen her talk about women as being trifling idiots, and she has this nice little speech about like she can't stand girls who are like this. And so she does have a negative connotation with silly girls. So this is quite an insult for her. I do love this because there's something about the term silly girls. It's very juvenile. It's very infantilizing. And I like it because I think we're going to see in this episode, both Dorian and Cale making her seem very girlish, making her seem very hyper feminine in a way, and even a reflection of innocence onto her. And I love it because internally, I don't think she doesn't feel that way. You know, like this is an assassin who was a slave for a year who's been through some shit. And I like that Uno reverse where it's like, they're just silly.
Yeah. And I mean, I think we also see them be really, really dumb and take Selena for granted. Yeah. Because they're so self-interested. So they are silly little men.
They are. Yeah, we should use that term more. Silly little men.
Yeah. Yep.
I should add that to my dating profile. Not looking for a silly little man.
I love that.
We'll get so many matches. Again, SJM is very good about leaving clues before shit goes down. And I feel like she's just doing all sorts of like red flags with her clues. Nehemia, going back to what you're saying, how she tells Selena that she's trying to like get in with the Queen. She does say, quote, I've been speaking with her for some weeks now, hoping to make her aware of how we might improve our relations. She withheld that information. If it's been a couple weeks and you've been talking to the Queen and we've been talking every single day, I feel like that's something that I would want to know. And why aren't you asking me for advice? Just telling me, friends tell friends shit. I'm like, if you don't tell me what you've eaten for lunch, I'm insulted. I'm like, excuse me, that sounded delicious. It's, you know what I mean? Like, it's just like you tell friends things. And so again, we're getting those clues of withholding.
Yeah. I think that's a great point because in previous interactions we've seen between Selena and Nehemia, Selena treats Nehemia like Selena is superior.
Yeah.
And what I think we're seeing here is kind of the tension on the other side where Nehemia is like, well, this is a matter just between royals and you're not a royal. And therefore I don't have to tell you. And that's not what she's overtly saying, but that's kind of the subtext of this engagement right now.
And you could potentially look at it as her being embarrassed. Like I'm just playing devil's advocate of being, saying that she's embarrassed of, I've had to give in and, talk to this woman that we both don't respect in order trying to, get some leeway here. But at the end of the day, it was withheld. And I think that while we might normally get that, hey, doesn't this feel suspicious? That night she comes in crying to Elena, so we kind of forget it.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. During this conversation, we discover that Nehemia has been leading Selena to the kennels. And we learn as they're walking through these kennels that Selena is fascinated by the dogs. And of course, I have to argue she sees herself in them. Quote,
Yep.
The breeds...
Yep. I'm just like, yes, she does.
Quote, the breeds were all fascinating and beautiful, but the sleek hounds aroused awe within her breast. Their arched undersides and slender long legs were full of grace and speed. They did not yap as the other dogs did, but sat perfectly still and watched her with dark, wise eyes. Now, hounds are usually the hunter dogs, right? And this whole description makes them sound kind of like dancers, or kind of like Selena when she was sword fighting with Kale that first training session. You know,
also, I love how she's like, they're yapping. They don't yap like the other ones, just like she doesn't yap like the other women in the court.
Yeah, exactly. Pick me. So we've talked for several episodes how Selena is equal to dogs, and everyone, Selena and herself included, keep making these references. So, you know, it's not my fault, guys. It's there.
Selena equals dog. I can't help it, especially with the upcoming lines that you're about to quote.
Exactly. So Selena asks Dorian if the puppies he has, because they've stumbled upon Dorian, he's playing with a bunch of puppies, are they all mutts? Quote, Dorian picked one up and stroked its head. Pity, isn't it? I still can't resist their charm. Just like Dorian cannot resist the puppies, he can't resist Selena, which we are going to continue to see in this episode. Same goes for Kale.
It's just like, she's the dog, guys. She's also literally a mutt herself. She is that a spoiler? No, we find that out. That's within the first 3 books. She is a mutt herself. Dorian can't help but be charmed by her, which is something that he knows, you know, kind of like, well, you know, she's pretty charming. Selena dog. Mm-hmm. Dog Selena. Mm-hmm. Let's accept this.
I wonder if Selena means dog in some language. It probably doesn't, but I wouldn't be surprised either.
Be rough. Oh my god, I didn't do that on purpose. However, Selena does see herself in one particular dog. Quote, there was a 5th pup, a bit larger than the others. Its coat was silky, silvery gold, that shimmered in the shadows. It opened its dark eyes, as if it knew it was being spoken about, and watched them. It was a beautiful animal, and had Selena not known better, she would have thought it purebred. You guys, she's not just any dog. She's this dog. This is the one that's like basically purebred, even though she's not completely fey. She basically, you know, like go read the rest of the series if you haven't read it at this point. But like, it's very on brand for who she is. And also the similarities between, you know, the silver, like, makes me think of like the silver hair, kind of makes me think of Rowan. And then, you know, she's very like Selena has the golden hair. Like, to me, this dog is basically fae.
Yeah. Well, and also think about Elena. I guess we don't know at this point, but Elena is her ancestor. She has silver hair. They look the same.
Yeah.
So it also feels
it's an
relevant.
Ancestral dog.
Yeah. Now that Selena has seen this puppy, whether she's cognizant of it or not, she identifies with it and therefore feels very, very protective of it, especially when Nehemia and Dorian say it's ill-tempered, it should be put down. Quote, if it won't respond to humans, then it will have to be killed, Dorian said offhandedly, and a spark went through Selena. Kill it? Kill it? For what reason? What did it do to you? It won't make a suitable pet, which is what all of these dogs will become. So you'd kill it because of its temperament? It can't help being that way. Okay, Selena.
I know. She even is at one point, she was like, but what of its mother?
Yeah, exactly. Selena is so clearly talking about herself. Yeah. She often feels misunderstood and unseen by the humans around her, so she's defending herself more than she's defending this puppy.
Selena is the dog. It's, you know, I feel like if no one walks away from this saying, Selena is the dog, we have failed them, we have failed ourselves.
Yeah, even if it's not her, but her child, the child self, right?
Yes.
Which
similarities.
There are similarities. Naturally, then, Selena begs Dorian to not have the puppy killed, and so Dorian agrees to find it a home. Quote, what's the dog's life to me? If it pleases you, then it shall happen. Her face burned as he rose to his feet, standing close. You promise? He put a hand on his heart. I swear on my crown that the pup shall live. So dramatic. I know that he's also being flirty, But in this act, what Dorian's actually doing is he is being the opposite of his father. He is doing the opposite of what his father did to Celaena's family. And so as metaphor, Dorian is essentially sparing Celaena's life. And in some weird way, Celaena is seeing this as a mercy, not only for the dog, but for herself. And it continues to set Dorian apart from his father, which is super necessary for them to become entangled later.
However, and I agree with all this, so this isn't me howevering you, this is me howevering Dorian. However, he says, what is this dog's life to me? Remember, that is Celaena. So even him being like gracious and look, I'm willing to spare them, it ends up being more of like, well, I don't care. I'm Dorian. I'm wonderful. My life means more to them. I don't care about their lives. And even though Dorian is sparing the dog, and then spares Celaena, metaphorically, think about in the next chapter or so, we're going to see Chaol really struggle with this death of those 500 soldiers. And I think this is like the most, like when you compare like the two emotions, like you have Dorian that's like, I don't care about this life. Granted, it's a dog and people are probably like, you're really looking hard into this, but it's like, this is episode 7. If you haven't figured that out, then I'm sorry. But, but like, I hope you get what I'm saying, where it's like one is definitely like, I don't care. Like he's being gracious and he's sparing her. And it's like all of the actions, while the other one ends up really feeling those emotions later.
Yeah. I completely agree with you. I feel like in this moment, SJM is disguising kind of the callousness of Dorian because it's just about a dog.
Yeah.
Whereas if he had to talk to Celaena about 500 slaughtered rebels and was like, well, that sucks, Celaena would have a very different reaction.
Exactly. And, even the way that he talks to her about this dog and like why he doesn't care if the dog dies, he even says, quote, plenty of dogs are painlessly laid to rest each day. I don't see why you would object to that, because she kills people, because she's an assassin. Mm-hmm. And again, he does it as a dig. It's another dig, because we talk about Dorian and Chaol using her assassin as a dig. What we will say, God, I sound like such a Chaol advocate here, but what we will see later is Chaol kind of understanding and giving recognition to part of her life that she didn't have a choice in. And he'll even say later of being like, she was raised to be an assassin, like she was a kid. And, not that Chaol suddenly, will stop mocking her or putting that in her face or anything like that. But again, just leave her alone. She didn't want to be an assassin. She wanted to be a healer. So when they walk out, this is just a funny image to me. When they walk out, quote, Dorian slumped down into the pen. The puppies immediately leapt on him. Perhaps I'll see you later tonight. If you're lucky, Celaena purred and walked away. Not much about that. I think it's really funny, but like it is, like where the puppy kisses are going after him. But you can also, I think it's interesting where you can see this confidence that Celaena has once the dog is saved. She's purring, she's flirting, she's finding a lot of comfort in that flirting.
It's funny you say that, because a note that I had in my book but didn't add here was that all the other puppies are all the other women of court.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so Celaena is now playing hard to get, right? Of like, okay.
Whatevs. I don't care.
Yeah.
Come find me.
After this encounter, Nehemia tries to call out Celaena for being interested in Dorian. Celaena, of course, tries to brush off the insinuation by telling Nehemia that both Celaena and Dorian are quote-unquote silly. This same word, silly, that she just used to describe all men who are just like silly little girls or silly little men. We talked about this, I think, in last week's episode, but I feel like this is an example where Celaena is indicating in some ways that she sees herself as more of a masculine figure than a traditional feminine figure.
Yep.
And yes, the phrase silly little girls is very feminine, but Celaena is attaching it to a masculine trait of men being men, toxic masculinity. And in some ways, Celaena has just called herself and Dorian toxic masculine men.
Yeah. But she's also not wrong.
She's not wrong.
Yeah. But, as Nehemia is, kind of probing with this whole attraction thing that's happening, we get a very visceral reaction from Celaena. Quote, Celaena's head whipped around, her eyes full of long forgotten fury that made her belly ache and twist. I would sooner cut out my own heart than love a Havillard, she snarled. As much as she flirts with Dorian, as much as she likes the way that he's going to look at her later. She likes the way that she flirts with him. She likes the way that, he kisses her cheek. She kisses his cheek, and there's that, flirtation there. We cannot let this moment go, because at the end of the day, that is the son of her enemy. You might look at this and kind of be like, well, that came out of nowhere. Like, especially since she just went from purring and everything, and then she goes back to flirting. And it really is an out of nowhere moment. Granted, she starts her period later tonight, and you can say
I was going to say, and her belly aches and twists.
Yeah, right. But rather than it feeling, kind of offhanded, I think it's just like a burst of true emotion coming in. And it should sober us into thinking, is her flirting with Dorian actually real emotions?
Right.
Which
exactly.
I think they're not. Yeah.
Right. I think she just likes the idea of being liked, right? She likes the idea. And in some ways, it doesn't matter if it's Kale or Dorian. She just, at the end of the day, they both fill the Sam void.
Yeah.
And that's all that matters.
Well, as we talked, Dorian fills the Sam void. Kale fills the Arabin void.
Exactly.
None of these are good.
During this conversation, Selena and Nehemia are walking around the palace grounds, and they see Cain. And Selena notes to herself that Cain has grown bigger over the last few days. And yet, quote, but he took off down the hall like a jackrabbit. This is the first time we've ever seen Cain appear as prey. A jackrabbit is not a predator, is not something that's going to come kill Selena and eat all her innards. In fact, it's probably the other way around. Selena, having seen Cain act like this, is going to have an increased sense of anxiety. She's going to be very jumpy throughout these chapters. And seeing Cain appear as prey and running away sparks that fear in Selena. And quite frankly, her period probably also contributes to that as well. But I mean, we should be afraid. Cain's not the one on his period and has anxiety. He's genuinely afraid.
I also could not imagine him bouncing away.
Like hopping like a jackrabbit. Where I was like, can we pick a different animal? But yes. To your point, we can't, it's a good pick because jackrabbits are not threatening. Mm-hmm. They are prey. Mm-hmm. Exactly. And now a word from our sponsors.
It's no secret that I love romance. Both of us love romance, Amy. And I love listening to romance and romance stories. The spicier, the better. Which is why I adore Dipsea, an audio app made for romance lovers with short, spicy stories that immerse you in the fantasies you've been craving.
Dipsea is a woman-founded app for spicy audiobooks and more, created by women, for women, and the feminine gaze.
I love it. I support it. I want more. And if you want more, their app has over 1,000 spicy audiobooks, all crafted by a team of professional writers and top-tier narrators.
And really, the narration matters.
Absolutely.
Whether you're looking for a rugged cowboy or a Scottish sailor, a sexy rendition of Pride and Prejudice, or the god of the underworld, you'll find characters you'll love on Dipsea.
I personally love all the werewolf ones. You know I love a werewolf romance.
You really do.
I do. And with their easy-to-explore app, you can search for your favorite romance genres like contemporary, historical, dark, sports, western, romantasy, sapphic, and more.
New chapters are released every week, so you'll always find something new to enjoy.
Right now, listeners of this show can get an extended 30-day free trial. Just go to dipseastories.com/booktalk to start your free trial.
That's DIPSEA stories.com/booktalk, BOOKTALK, for 30 days of full access for free.
Visit dipseastories.com/booktalk. We talk about a lot of different books on our podcast, Amy, but if there is one thing I just keep coming back to, it is romance.
Imagine not only reading romance, but getting swept away in every stolen glance and touch. That is what you're going to find on Galatea.
Galatea is a reading app where anyone craving a little me time can dive into a library of romance stories that leave you feeling recharged and fulfilled.
There are over 1,000 bestsellers to choose, from shifter romance to bad boy billionaires, forbidden love, werewolf alphas, slow burn fantasy, teen drama, and much, much more.
You know I love my werewolf alpha stories, and my billionaires, and my slow burns. Oh my god, all of it. Galatea is home to original series and standalone stories with an exclusive catalog of best-selling authors, with new chapters dropping daily, so there's always something new to explore.
Over 30 million people have fallen in love with reading on Galatea. Join now to indulge in stories that make you feel like yourself again.
Right now, Galatea is offering our listeners an extra 25% off on top of an already irresistible, affordable subscription when you go to galatea.com/booktalk.
That's GALATEA.com/booktalk, BOOKTALK, to indulge in unlimited stories for even less.
Head over to galatea.com/booktalk and go read about some werewolves. One of the things I promised that I do this year is to both treat myself and really take time in what I choose to add to my closet.
As you know, I'm preparing for a wedding and that's super expensive, but just because that's happening in my life doesn't mean that I want to lower the quality of the things that I buy for myself during the regular year.
Quince is my go-to for luxury essentials at affordable prices. Quince offers a range of high-quality items at prices within reach, like 100% Mongolian cashmere sweaters from $50 and washable silk tops and dresses.
The best part about Quince is that all those items are priced 50 to 80% less than similar brands, which is exactly what I'm looking for.
That's because Quince only works with factories that uses safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing practices and premium fabrics and finishes. By working directly with the factories, Quince is able to cut out the cost of the middleman and passes the savings on to us. One of my favorite things I got from Quince is my boyfriend cardigan, which I have not been able to take off.
Their washable silk blouses has really elevated my work wardrobe and makes cleanup super duper easy because I hate dry cleaning.
Give yourself the luxury you deserve with Quince. Go to quince.com/booktalk for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns.
That's QUINCE.com/booktalk, BOOKTALK, to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/booktalk.
This episode is brought to you by Hyundai. Think you know what an electric vehicle should be? Think again. From the charge time and range in the Ioniq 5 and 6 to the 601 horsepower Ioniq 5N, Hyundai is redefining what EVs should be. Learn more about Hyundai EVs at HyundaiUSA.com. EPA estimated 303-mile driving range for 2024 Ioniq 5 SE SEL limited rear-wheel drive and 361-mile driving range for 2024 Ioniq 6 SE long-range rear-wheel drive with fully charged battery. Actual range may vary.
We're now in chapter 33, and we are in Keltain's point of view. And I really do appreciate her point of view, and I have a lot of thoughts about her. So, quote, her servant sprayed perfume, and the young woman gulped down the sugar water before putting her hand on the door. She'd been in the midst of smoking a pipe when Duke Parrington had been announced. She fled into the dressing room and changed her clothes, hoping the scent wouldn't linger. If he found out about the opium, she could just blame it on the horrible headaches that she'd been having lately. Keltain passed through her bedroom into the foyer and then into the sitting room. Amy's going to have some really good notes about this, but I also want to point out that talking about perfume, because the last time perfume was referenced was when Selena was using it to talk about poison and identifying poison. And I just think that's kind of like, oh, both women have their own interpretation of perfume, you know? But both is armor, is a weapon, is a shield. And, we're seeing this poor girl with a drug addiction, and she's just about to be manipulated to the umpteenth degree.
Yes, we are about, as Jack says, to see an Uno reverse on Keltain, and the poor thing has no idea what's about to hit her. I mean, she just wanted to chill with her bong. Like, let her do her thing.
Let her have her fun. I get it.
Yeah, we all get it on some level.
Yeah.
Quote, she had the distinct feeling that she was trapped in a box, a lovely cage filled with tapestries and cushions. Keltain isn't wrong, but, Even though she senses she's being trapped, she doesn't understand when the trap has been sprung. All she knows is she's a little animal about to become a big animal snack. And it's actually very sad.
Yeah. She sees her, she knows she's in a cage. She knows that there's no power, that it's just this pretty little cage and she's this pretty little bird. And any power that she's trying to claim is all sorts of, she's grasping for it. She has no power. And I think Kaltain is very aware of the fact that she has no power. And the more we see Kaltain, the more heartbreaking her experience is, and the reality of her situation. And she's aware of herself. During my bachelor's degree, do you remember this? When I did the female alteration thing?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So during my bachelor's degree, me and one of my friends, we did conference we were such nerds of bachelor degree literature stuffness. And we were come up with our own literary theory. And we called it the female alteration. And basically the concept of that is women have to adapt and alter their brain in order to survive and try to cope with it. I think one of the examples we did in our presentation was Mrs. Bennet from Pride and Prejudice, who absolutely hated Wickham when he ran off with her daughter, but then was like, no, he's the best son-in-law, because you have to adapt. So I think we're seeing that with Kaltain.
Yep, absolutely. And I think that she's being forced to adapt. She's also not at her prime right now. She's under the influence of drugs. She's not as alert as she might need to be successful when coming up against a predator like Duke Parrington. And what we see as the reader that Kaltain cannot see is that Duke Parrington is using Kaltain's own tactics against her. The same tactics Kaltain used with the Queen not that long ago. Duke Parrington says to Kaltain, quote, "You're one of the cleverest women I've met. His Highness told me the same thing yesterday." Kaltain's spine snapped and straightened. She saw Dorian's face and the crown that sat upon his head. "The prince said that? About me?" The Duke put a hand on her knee, stroking it with his thumb. Of course, then Lady Lillian interrupted before he could say more. Parrington is playing Kaltain's game and she doesn't even know it. Parrington has become the cat and Kaltain is now the mouse. Now, I want to note, because this is going to come up again every time we're in Kaltain's perspective from now on, Kaltain is not thinking about how beautiful Dorian is or how blue his eyes are, which would be, which is something Celaena thinks about, right? She's attracted to him physically. What Kaltain imagines is the crown on his head. It's about the ambition of seizing power. Now, as first-time readers, we might despise her for that ambition, but we implore you, kind listener, to just remember she is trying to better her position just like anybody else, but also might be under the other influences that we're not quite aware of at this moment.
Yeah. I don't want to blast. I don't know if they're a listener or they just commented and I don't want to blast them, but alas, I think it's a good moment to talk about this. I know that there's been people who've reached out that are not a fan of Kaltain. They're saying that she's not a girl's girl, that she's, was horrible to Celaena as well. But it's she is well on her way of being doped up, of being, she's possessed, right? Kind of essentially, in the end. And we're getting hints of that. That's what the headaches are. Mm-hmm. And who we are reading now is not the Kaltain we got initially. And that comes back to our question is, would have things been different if Celaena had befriended her at the beginning, maybe had seen some of these changes happening within Kaltain? And I do want to highlight that he is touching her as this is happening. He has invited himself into her body and is distracting her with information so that he can make a physical move on her that she would not welcome normally. But she is high. She is not within her senses to consent.
Exactly. Just because she's not pushing him off does not mean she is consenting, because she is under the influence.
Yeah. And you can't tell me that perfume was enough to a high person when you see them. And it's just that the presumption over her own sexuality and ownership of her body.
Yeah. And I could be wrong. And maybe this is a spoiler. Maybe this is made up in my brain. I'm pretty sure, even though Kaltain thinks she's hiding the opium addiction, Parrington is actually the one feeding the opium addiction.
Yeah.
Because it makes her more susceptible to possession.
Yep. Absolutely.
Okay. Okay, I'm glad I'm not the only one.
I remember that
this.
too. You and I could both be living in our own delusion, though.
At the end of the scene, Keltane snaps from her fog. And I really have to call this out because it really drives home what we're talking about, right? She's had all this brain fog. She can't keep two and two together. She can't even remember everything Parrington is saying to her. And then all of a sudden, quote, something wild and foreign issued a cry within her, shattering through the pain in her head, and thoughts of poppies and cages faded away. She must do what was necessary to save the crown and her future.
She says it's foreign. I'm like slapping my knee and it's making the camera shake. She says it's foreign. Why are we not listening to her? This isn't her thought.
Yeah.
That's all. I just want to yell.
Yes.
You continue.
I completely agree with you. It's, before Parrington was here, she was thinking about how she's in a cage. And now this foreign thing is making her forget those feelings of feeling caged. And I must save the crown. No.
Yeah. Like, what is this?
She doesn't have noble intentions. That's
No.
not what this is about. Later that evening, Celaena's in her room alone doing some research while Nehemia is with the queen at a play. Suddenly, though, Nehemia comes in and she looks like a wreck. We learn from Nehemia that Adarlan killed 500 Eelway rebels and their children in cold blood because they were taking them somewhere and some people act out. Nehemia says to Celaena, quote, "What is the point in being a princess of Eelway if I cannot help my people? How can I call myself their princess when such things happen?" This is a classic SJM, like calls to like, and I have no doubt that Celaena/Aelin feels the same way about Terrasen. And
I thought about that too. Sorry.
No, it's okay. Even though Nehemia doesn't know that, Celaena knows it. And I feel like that's what really ties Celaena to Nehemia, this sense of shared responsibility for their people, to their people. And I think that's what's going to carry Celaena, even when Celaena doubts Nehemia. She's still going to wrestle with this idea of, no, but Nehemia is a good person because of these things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Celaena hearing those words must be so triggering and hard for her. And we know it is triggering because she ends up being really lost in thought. Mm-hmm. Granted, we know that she's on her period. We know that she's in pain, but we also know that she is very much hurting for Nehemia, but for herself as well. And I think that just kind of having that in mind when you see her interaction with Dorian too, mm-hmm. and the distraction that he provides from the reality of the situation, which is Adarlan. Mm-hmm. I would also like to note this moment, quote, "Tears dripped from Nehemia's cheeks onto her white dress." And, I'm like, I wanted one of the themes to be white dresses and white cloaks and white clothing in general. And it's like with Nehemia, what we see is someone who's almost ghostly and who is in mourning. I will say Amy had talked about in our ACOTAR episodes that white flowers meant mourning.
Yes, because white is the color of mourning in China.
Yeah, I'm just pointing that out. So if you think about it, I also know there are some other cultures that people wear white for funerals as well. So it makes sense to me. And then we get this other image, quote, "Her gold jewelry pressed hard into Celaena's cheek. Nehemia wept, unable to say anything. The assassin simply held her for as long as it took for the pain to ease." I love the imagery of Nehemia's gold jewelry, her being assigned a sign of royalty, being forced and pressed into Celaena. It's almost like this, hey, royalty needs to be pushed onto you. And which again, with the same thing with the words being like, what kind of princess would I be? And additionally, I love that she reverts to, quote, the assassin, because the assassin can't say anything. The assassin needs to hide her identity. And, even I think Dorian even says something like, what kind of king would I be? What kind of man would I be if I allowed X, Y, and Z? And that's the same thing that Nehemia is questioning. Celaena's getting these questions left and right. So Celaena's going to inevitably be asking, what kind of blank, blank, blank am I?
Yeah. No, I love that point. I didn't even think about the fact that Nehemia's gold jewelry being pressed hard into Celaena's skin. Like, Celaena is being forced to remember her responsibility as a royal, even though she's trying to avoid it. by focusing on her assassin identity. And that the end of that sentence that you read, quote, for as long as it took for the pain to ease, it's not specific to Nehemia's pain.
Yeah.
Right? That could be Celaena's pain as well.
Very
thinking
easily.
about her responsibilities that she's shirking.
Yep. We start chapter 34 with Celaena reflecting on Nehemia's news. Quote, Celaena sat by a window in her bedroom, watching the snow dance in the night air. What did we say about snow before in the last episode? That it represents trauma. It represents many times Eelway for her. And the fact that she's sitting here watching the snow while processing what's happens to Eelway is, metaphorically beautiful. I also like to think of this as the night that people just can't leave her alone. At all. Not at all. And before we continue, I just kept thinking in my head, guess who's back? Back again. Philippa's back. Tell a friend. She, our girl's been gone for a while, and all of a sudden Philippa is back and is here to help our girl.
She reminds me of Alice in ACOTAR. Just kind of shows up when it's convenient.
SJM loves a convenient maid.
Yep. We've had several listeners point out how much they enjoy this chapter, this sequence of Celaena being on her period. And so I just have to call that out as we proceed into these chapters, because it is an interesting use of the female cycle that I'm interested to see how our conversation goes, because is it necessary? I don't know. Let's see.
Let's talk about it.
Yeah. I want to point out that as Celaena is thinking about how her cycle is restarting, now that she's healthier, she's got meat on her bones, she's no longer malnourished, she also thinks to herself, quote, how is she going to train like this? The duel was 4 weeks away. Now, I know that the focus is how soon the duel is. She's been here a few months. It's less than, it's a month away now. But I also want to signal that, she's basically telling us she's going to be on her period during the duel. And I don't think that comes back up.
No. She gets her period for one chapter and we don't talk about it again. And then she wears white.
Yeah,
no, that's false.
Yeah, that's fair.
Couple things on this period thing. And I'm going to give a slight spoiler warning here when it comes to SJM verse. We learn in ACOTAR that periods are worse than mortal periods, that Fae periods are more intense, are more painful, and they last, and you don't get them as often. So I think there's a little bit of a clue to the Fae heritage here of the fact that her period is particularly brutal. So that was one little breadcrumb that I felt like I saw there.
I totally forgot that, so I'm glad you remembered.
I also was on my period when I read this and was cramping and was laying down in bed, and I was like, I am you, you are me. And I was also coping with at my uncle's funeral, and I was like, you're dealing with 500 deaths. I'm dealing with one. I understand. Yeah. So there was a lot of emotions happening there, but I also love that she's sitting with her heavy heart there, and I'm sure that her period doesn't help, but a lot of times we kind of talk about, and you and I have even made some comments about periods kind of making you more emotional and everything. I don't get that here. I don't at all get this sense of additional melancholy, additional snideness when in regards to her period. It's a very female moment. And again, we're going to be talking in gender hetero norms. And I know a lot of women struggle with their periods or have, hysterectomies, and there is no way, shape, or form does having a period make you a woman, I just want to, I recognize that. However, there is something that men just cannot handle with the concept of periods. And, there's a lot of things of are men subconsciously uncomfortable with this idea of women capable of get to give life. Right. And you have this contradiction between her period, which is a symbol of she is now capable of having kids again, to the contrast of 500 lives lost.
Yeah. That's a very intense juxtaposition when you think about it.
I also think we need more period representation in books.
Yeah, that's true.
In general. One of the things that I made a very conscious choice of in my 20s was I'm going to stop pretending like I don't have a period. And I used to when I worked at an office, because now I work from home, take my period bag or tampons and just go to the bathroom. And I wouldn't be like trying to hide it or trying to, like discreetly take my whole purse with me. And, I very much try to be like, no, I'm on my period. You're going to deal with it. Poor Randall, our friend and roommate.
He's got 2 sisters. He's fine.
He's got 2 sisters, and he definitely hears the like, I'm cramping all the time. So when Kale shows up, I think this is one of the funniest fucking scenes in the book. I think that it is both heartwarming and tells so much at the same time being so freaking funny. Like, so Celaena kind of is like trying to tell him, like, hey bro, I'm sick. And he just disregards it in the same way that Dorian disregards her pain. But he just like walks in, and Celaena thinks, quote, didn't he get it? Celaena grimaced. And then she says, no, I'm truly feeling unwell. It makes me sick too, Kale murmured, glaring at the floor. Like, no, that's not what we're talking about, Kale.
Yeah, no.
Both men disregard her pain.
They really do. And what's funny to me in this moment is that Celaena was actually wishing Dorian would walk through the door, and it ends up being Kale. So that adds an extra layer of like, fuck you, Kale. Like, I don't feel well. You're not the man I wanted. Like, please leave me alone. Yeah, but he like, just continues to monologue.
What? I know. It's so funny. But I love both of their monologues that we get later too, with like all of a sudden Dorian gets a monologue. But how much of Celaena wanting to have Dorian there had to do with the fact of wanting to see the son of the man who caused this and her own anger before? Was it something that she truly wanted to feel comfort in seeing him? Or did she want to yell at someone just to have an outlet?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. Cause it's not like she's happy when he does show up.
Yeah, she's not like, oh, thank God, I can now relax. You're here.
Yeah.
It's still a like, fuck off, please go away.
Yeah.
And Kale continues in his monologue, and he says, quote, I appreciate your honesty and unwavering friendship with her being Nehemia. I know there are rumors about Nehemia's connection to the rebels in Ilwe, but I'd like to think that if my country was conquered, I would stop at nothing to win back my people's freedom too. I will say in this moment, I do appreciate that he honors the female friendship. I appreciate that he honors the woman that is Nehemia, and he respects that from her, and he respects the connection that they have. And in this moment, it's not something to be threatened by, because we've seen him continuously being like, should we put them together? I don't know if we should allow this. And now it's like, this isn't something to be afraid of. This is something to celebrate. Again, this is happening in the midst of her period, a very heteronormative terms, but a very female experience, right? It's the camaraderie of women when we're lamenting of saying, God, I'm on my period. This sucks so hard. And so here he is talking about this female friendship. So I do appreciate the balance of that. And then for him to immediately be afraid of the female experience after.
So, of course, because he's a silly little man.
Yeah.
To what you're saying, this does not sound like the very black and white Kale that we met at the start of the book, who sticks to orders and sticks to rules. And it, to me, shows his growth. He's wrestling with this idea about what he believes in, the kingdom he's part of, and this empathy that he's starting to develop for people who are unlike him. It also, I think, sets kind of lays the groundwork for why he's going to be able to support Aelin and her mission to save Terrasen in the future. I think that growth is necessary. I think it's necessary for their future relationship as well.
Yeah.
And what's dawning on me right now is that we see Celaena physically vulnerable, right? Your period is a very vulnerable time. You emotionally feel vulnerable. You physically feel very vulnerable because it just sucks.
Yeah.
And what we're getting is vulnerability from Kale, unprompted. And we're going to get some vulnerability from Dorian too. So it's like they're all on their cycle. They're all in tune with each other.
Everyone's very emotional right now. And everyone's like, what I want is to go to Celaena and just it almost kind of reminds me of Christmas Story, where it's like 3 ghosts shall knock on your door, will visit you tonight, and like each one just keeps coming, and our girl over here is just trying to be like, I would like my heating pad. I would like to stare at the sad snow.
Yeah, I just don't want to move, people.
Yeah. In Kale's ongoing monologue, he says, quote, "It's just that I take great pride in my job," he continued. "Kale," she said again. Oh, she was about to vomit. "And you're Adeline's assassin. But I was wondering if you wanted to..." What is he going to say? I want to know what he was going to say. I know Selena suspects that maybe he was going to ask me to the dance. I think that is absolutely not it. I think it's like ridiculous of him going from, "I can't, I'm so wound up, I'm so worked up, I'm so angry about what happened and I am outraged. Do you want to go to a dance with me?"
I don't know. I had a hard time too, because it does come across as like him working himself up to ask her out. Like, "I take great pride in my job, but I realize that there's a gray area and you're an assassin, but maybe we can make this work,"
I was like, but like maybe he was going to offer her to be like, "What if I help you assassin people?" I don't know, not that, but like, what if, like, I almost interpreted it like, what if I help you with Nehemia? What if we help some way? I kind of took it as heading in that direction, because I can't, again, it's like hard for me to go from 500 murdered people to, do you want to go on a
dance?
Like, what if we like went on a date with each other?
Yeah. I don't know where SJM was going with that.
It's one of those, if I could ask a question, I really want to know what he was going to say there.
Yep. I agree. Well, Selena doesn't really care, though, because she finally cannot handle the nausea anymore and vomits in the middle of Kale's monologue. Quote, "He made a disgusted noise, jumping back a foot. Tears sprang up as the bitter, sharp taste filled her mouth. She hung over her knees, letting drool and bile spill on the floor." I get that. I have to when you have to just let it all
yeah.
But also, remember, vomiting reminds us of a character's humanity. And we are being reminded of Selena's weakness/humanity. She also has tears from vomiting. Now, we've seen this happen before when she, during training, had to vomit after running. She also had tears in her eyes. And I still continue to think that that's some form of shame. Shame that she's vulnerable. Shame that she's demonstrating weakness, once again, in front of Kale. And ultimately, as someone who identifies as a traditionally masculine presence, I also think Selena feels shame over the feminine side of her body that is this period and the nausea.
I mean, and I agree with that. And I would like to double down on your note there of her feeling the shame of that experience, because when was the last time that she threw up with him was when they were training, and she felt ashamed there. And it was like, so you have this continued moment of feeling weak in front of Kale. And, when Kale watched Selena throw up during training, it was almost a moment of respect, right? Mm-hmm. It was him not making fun of her. It was him still being there for her. This is a moment where he's not even holding her hair. He, takes her, he helps her to the bed, and he's like, "Oh my God, you actually are sick." But, and he does take her to the bed, but he doesn't assist her beyond that. Like, he does jump away from the vomit. He doesn't immediately grab her hair. I know some people are super squeamish and they can't handle the sound of vomit and stuff. Like, I get that, and they have a visceral reaction. But if you're not holding my hair, like, if you're not one of those people, I have so much hair. And if you're not there to hold my hair or at least like rub my back, at the very least, then it's just such a red flag for me. I'm thinking about past experiences with ex-boyfriends. Mm-hmm. Just I'm like, fucking hold my hair. And speaking of past experience with ex-boyfriends, some men just cannot handle periods. Like, It is fascinating to see which guys can and cannot. There is something that men get put off with, and I will argue with Kale here that it's not just blood. He sees blood regularly. Dorian will say, doesn't he see like massacred bodies? But yet the idea of a period terrifies him and makes him so uncomfortable that he has to run away. And again, it's the fear of the female experience, of the female body, and the fact that women are capable, in theory, of giving life because they have a period. Sometimes that's not the case, but again, larger representation of this moment. And think about it, it's just badass that women bleed 7 days, if not more. Like, I'm going to bleed out the amount of something that would normally weaken or kill something, and I'm going to survive this because I am a badass bitch. We should, like, genuinely, period should be absolutely celebrated. And there are two types of guys in this world, Amy, as someone who's engaged to a woman. There are two types of guys. There are guys who are willing to have period sex and guys who are not willing to have period sex. There are guys that are like, let's throw a towel down. I don't care. Let's go. And then there's the ones who are like, is there still a little bit of residue left there? I don't know if I'm willing to go near it. And it is so and like, you can tell which one Kale is. Like, he's like, I do not want anything to do with. Although, and then Dorian walks in and he's like, I heard you're on your period. He is so, throw a towel down, let's fuck kind of a guy.
Yeah, he is.
But it's, you know, and I think that I think we should judge men more for not being willing to have period sex. I understand. Before the first time for me, I was like very uncomfortable because I was like, there's blood everywhere. But then you're like, actually, do you know what helps cramps? Orgasms. Fun fact.
Well,
that helps quite a bit.
And it's supposed to be more intense anyway. Like,
it is
pleasurable.
Not that I know, Mom. Not that I know.
She knows you have sex.
God, I wish I was. She doesn't listen to this podcast. That's fine. But yeah, like it's very, like, we should just judge men more for not being willing to have period sex. I think that they're little weak ass bitches. They're silly little men. Also note that suddenly Kale becomes proper a gentleman because he bows to Selena when he exits. It's like she is now a woman in his eyes and he has a lady and now he has to bow to her and be proper to leave.
Yeah. He's never bowed to Selena before.
No.
Yeah. That's a very, very strange reaction from him because of, and I get it. Like, oh, this is the first, I mean, and he's been around her for months and this is the first time it's happened. Right.
Yeah.
So, you are like my mother and the other women I know, like, oh no.
You're a girl. Blood comes from you. Oh no.
So Kale leaves in a hurry because he's overwhelmed by Selena's bodily functions, whether that's the period, the vomiting, or all the above. And then Dorian appears and he wants to play a game. He wants to play Uno. And he just doesn't take no for an answer.
Sorry. Kale doesn't even know about period shits. All right, we're leaving it at that. He's just lucky. There are more bodily functions that could happen. Dorian's there with Uno. And when I first read this, I was like, oh my gosh, he's such a pompous, entitled ass. And then I realized actually there is a psychological reason why he's here and wants to play a game. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit later once we get to his POV. Yes, that's fair. Before we give him sympathy, I want to point out the two things that he tells Selena. Dorian tells her about her period, quote, "It can't be that bad. And you look fine to me." He's one of those men that doesn't believe that periods are all that bad and that they can be as bad as a heart attack, as studies have shown. And we need to find those period simulators. We need to put it to his body and, make him crumple in pain. And he just disregards her pain. And I think that is poignant because he is hyper-focused on his own pain.
Yes. I do agree with that point. Selena, rightly so, chucks a book at Dorian because she's so annoyed with him. And then she's like, oh no, I'm so sorry. Don't kill me. Don't send me back to Endovier. And Dorian kind of brushes it off and says, quote, "I'd hope that Adderley's assassin would choose to attack me in a more dignified manner, at least with a sword or knife, though preferably not in the back." I have to say this is the opposite of Kale's monologue from earlier, where Kale actively was in the process of rejecting Selena's assassin identity. He was like, I know you're Adderley's assassin, but...
Yeah.
Whereas here, Dorian is like, oh, well... You're Adderley's assassin. Do better. Right? And not that that's the right sentiment to have when she's on her period and in pain, but I did want to point out that this is a habit we see of both men.
Yeah. I mean, Kale is understanding Selena faster than Dorian on some levels. Like, I think Kale's always understood that you can't trust her level. And... and Dorian's never understood that. And while I will ride for our girl here, Kale's not wrong about not trusting, like, he shouldn't trust Selena.
Yeah. So, I think there's so many ways to slice and dice this. And I think Selena herself is confused by all of this as well, right? Chaol makes it very clear he doesn't trust her because she's an assassin, but he does trust her because he sees more than her assassinness. Dorian is very tolerant of her assassinness or her assassin background and doesn't reject her for it the way that Chaol does. But at the same time, he's not capable of seeing her for more than just that. So it's like both are a double-edged sword.
Yeah, I mean, he sees her for her assassinness, but it doesn't understand the assassinness because at the end of the day, her assassinness, which is coming up with the words here, her assassinness will always be a representation of his own rebellion.
Yeah.
Not her.
Yeah.
So her, like the term and identity of assassin does not belong to her. It belongs to him and his identity.
That's a very, very good point.
Celaena and Dorian have this back and forth about his name. And because she was like, sorry, Your Majesty. And he says, quote, it's Dorian, by the way, not Your Highness. Very well. Say it. Say what? My name. Say, very well, Dorian. She rolled her eyes. If it pleases your magnanimous holiness, I shall call you by your first name. Magnanimous holiness. Oh, I like that one. Again, there's power to name into a title and her resistance to call him his name and the intimacy that comes with calling someone their name. I'll kind of tease a little bit ahead. In the next chapter or so, Philippa will call her Celaena, and Celaena's going to be really happy to hear that. And I'm trying to... Do Dorian and Chaol really call her Celaena when they're talking to her one-on-one? Because it's not like I sit here and when I talk to you, I don't call you Amy.
Yeah, I don't think they say their names a lot to each other.
No. And when they have to, it's Lillian because they're in public. So, the fact that when Philippa calls her Celaena and she gets excited about it, it's, I feel like it's a clue that maybe the guys haven't been calling her that name. And at the end of the day, no one's calling her by her true name. So it's just layers and layers of not having that intimacy that Dorian gets to have.
Yeah. Which also explains why Celaena avoids sharing that intimacy. I mean, she does ultimately say Dorian's name, but when he wants it, she avoids it because he's telling her to be intimate with him.
Yeah.
And she's like, no, you're not doing that for me. Why should I do that for you?
And no matter what, it will always be a one-sided intimacy. It will always be one-sided because no one's calling her by her real name.
Yeah.
No one's call me by your naming her. I actually really like that movie, despite the cannibal in it.
I have not seen it because Armie Hammer is in it.
But it's also really good. But Timothée Chalamet is in it.
Chalamet. We know how to pronounce his name.
Shalalala, 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 my name. Thank you for listening to part 1 of this week's episode of Book Talk for Book Talk with Jac and Amy. Stick around for part 2, which airs on Thursday.
We encourage you to rate and subscribe to our show on your preferred podcast listening platform. We would also love to hear your thoughts based on today's conversation. You can submit your comments to our forum at booktalkforbooktalk.com for a chance to have your feedback discussed during a future mini episode or a Patreon exclusive episode.
If you're enjoying the podcast, please visit our website, booktalkforbooktalk.com, to view our latest merch and learn about supporting the show through Patreon or Venmo. You can follow us on TikTok, Instagram, or YouTube at the handle Book Talk for Book Talk.
Bye.
Forgot something.
Go ahead.
Hold on. Right, okay. Here it is.
Amazing.
My tiara.
It's my tiara.
It actually hurts really bad.
Oh.
I was wearing it last night while watching, we did a 50 Shades of Grey marathon.
Yeah.
And I just was wearing it throughout, trying to break it in.
I wonder if it's one of those ones you just set on top and pin to your hair. No.
No, you can check it out later. It's heavy as the crown that is heavy.
Yeah, okay.
Did you hear ACOTAR has officially been canceled?
I saw. Well, you know what? SJM just made a ton of money.
I know, right? She did, because there was that cancellation clause in there.
I wouldn't be surprised if she was counting on it. In the set, I would, as an author, I'd be like, you're going to fuck it up anyway. Just pay me for wasting my time.
Right, yeah.
The search for truth never ends. Introducing June's Journey, a hidden object mobile game with a captivating story. Connect with friends, explore the roaring 20s, and enjoy thrilling activities and challenges while supporting environmental causes. After 7 years, the adventure continues with our immersive travels feature. Explore distant cultures and engage in exciting experiences. There's always something new to discover. Are you ready? Download June's Journey now on Android or iOS.
We talk about a lot of different books on our podcast, Amy, but if there is one thing I just keep coming back to, it is romance.
Imagine not only reading romance, but getting swept away in every stolen glance and touch. That is what you're going to find on Galatea.
Galatea is a reading app where anyone craving a little me time can dive into a library of romance stories that leave you feeling recharged and fulfilled.
There are over 1,000 bestsellers to choose, from shifter romance to bad boy billionaires, forbidden love, werewolf alphas, slow burn fantasy, teen drama, and much, much more.
You know I love my werewolf alpha stories, and my billionaires, and my slow burns. Oh my god, all of it. Galatea is home to original series and standalone stories with an exclusive catalog of best-selling authors, with new chapters dropping daily, so there's always something new to explore.
Over 30 million people have fallen in love with reading on Galatea. Join now to indulge in stories that make you feel like yourself again.
Right now, Galatea is offering our listeners an extra 25% off on top of an already irresistible, affordable subscription when you go to galatea.com/booktalk.
That's GALATEA.com/booktalk, BOOKTALK, to indulge in unlimited stories for even less.
Head over to galatea.com/booktalk and go read about some werewolves. One of the things I promised that I do this year is to both treat myself and really take time in what I choose to add to my closet.
As you know, I'm preparing for a wedding and that's super expensive, but just because that's happening in my life doesn't mean that I want to lower the quality of the things that I buy for myself during the regular year.
Quince is my go-to for luxury essentials at affordable prices. Quince offers a range of high-quality items at prices within reach, like 100% Mongolian cashmere sweaters from $50 and washable silk tops and dresses.
The best part about Quince is that all those items are priced 50 to 80% less than similar brands, which is exactly what I'm looking for.
That's because Quince only works with factories that uses safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing practices and premium fabrics and finishes. By working directly with the factories, Quince is able to cut out the cost of the middleman and passes the savings on to us. One of my favorite things I got from Quince is my boyfriend cardigan, which I have not been able to take off.
Their washable silk blouses has really elevated my work wardrobe and makes cleanup super duper easy because I hate dry cleaning.
Give yourself the luxury you deserve with Quince. Go to quince.com/booktalk for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns.
That's QUINCE.com/booktalk, BOOKTALK, to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/booktalk.